Alright, so today we got the second part of the Iron Warriors, part 2, by Baldermort's Guide to Warhammer. As always, I'm going to be leaving a link to the original video and channel down in the description below, so go ahead and make sure that you check them out. So, just a little quick recap as to what happened in the first part of this video. We saw the story between the Colonel and the Iron Warriors, and they were kind of using what it seemed like guerrilla warfare tactics. It ended up being very successful for them, and that they were hitting them with orbital bombardment, and then they would go in, clean up the remnants of whoever was left. And then we saw, well, I also learned that they were the 4th Legion, and that they were one of the largest ones kind of during the Unification Wars. And a lot of things I kept hearing, and also just in the comments as well. And the first part was that they were essentially doing all the shit jobs that nobody else really wanted to do. And then because of that, their numbers were kind of consistently diminishing because they had to keep garrisoning certain planets, or after a while when they did realize that they weren't really being, I guess, appreciated, like not very, like they were never going to be the center spotlight, as he put it in the first half. And because of this, they called it the corpse grinder, or I don't know if that's just the way Baldermort called it, but essentially it kind of seemed like they were just kind of throwing their lives away, like just charging straight. And that also was kind of diminishing their numbers. I still don't know specifically why the decimation happened. I don't know if it could be because of that as well, but it was ordered by the Primarch. Primarch Perturabo. I still can't say his name right. But then in the last little section, we saw a little story between the lieutenant and the commander from the Iron Warriors. Essentially, what just happened there is that when they got the decimation order, it seemed like the way they were talking, they were in front of other Iron Warriors. And that's kind of also why he later states that he gave himself up in front of everybody. And that essentially this guy's complaining, and that the way this commander views him, he's iron on the outside, but not iron on the inside. Or iron within, iron without. Right? And essentially he just pretty much said that he's going to be the one that's going to kill him in the whole decimation part. And also just one little quick tidbit I saw in the comments, which kind of made sense to me, was that the Iron Warriors actually hate it when people call them traitors, because in their eyes, they're not traitors. They were betrayed first, and then, so they considered I guess it would be the whole Imperium of Man, possibly then, as traitors, and they just see themselves as kind of just being ones that got fucked over, as far as I know. Curious to kind of see what the second half is going to bring. Hopefully there's a reason why the decimation would have happened, why this Primarch decided to do this. Maybe the Primarch was ordered to do this by his guys, because all I saw was that he ordered it, but was never really given a reason. And obviously he doesn't really need a reason, because for the ones who are considered true Iron Warriors, iron within, iron without, they're going to follow it regardless of what the reason is. Whew, bit of a mouthful. But let's go ahead and get to the actual video. But before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe. It really does help me a lot. Hit that notification bell right there. That way you get notified every time I do upload. Sometimes I'm playing twice a day. Now I'm working on them whenever I can, and releasing them at some point the next day. That way you at least got one fresh new video each day to enjoy at your leisure. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and see what the Iron Warriors second half has in store for us.
Say the only 2 words I will accept. You know them. So say them. For this is the last time we will speak. As a younger Astartes finally broke eye contact as his officer stood back, he closed his eyes and looked down at the ground and said, "Thank you."
Okay, so the whole thing about the corpse grinder and then just kind of throwing their life away, because I mean at that point they didn't care for it didn't really seem like they cared for anything, so they were just kind of do the whole corpse grinder thing. And when he said thank you right now, knowing that he's gonna die now, he can at least die in a way that was given by an order. Like he didn't have any, I guess, manipulation in a sense as to for how his death happened. And I guess this is also why when he said that he genuinely liked him as a person in that first part, I guess this is his gift to kind of like release him from, so that he could die, I guess, an Iron Warrior. I think.
To quote, "Meanwhile, the Iron Warriors' Primarch, Perturabo, was raised on Olympia, a mountainous planet divided into warring city-states, Because of the rugged terrain, military supremacy revolved around the construction of stone fortresses and the control of strategic mountain passes. Perturabo had an affinity for cold logic and the use of technology, which made him a superb military engineer. By the time the Emperor's Great Crusade reached Olympia, Perturabo was warlord to the tyrant of Logos. As was his custom when one of his lost sons was found, the Emperor gave Perturabo rule over his home planet, and relocated his legion's headquarters there. Upon taking command of his legion, Perturabo reviewed the war record of his newer forces. After heavily analyzing their record, effectiveness, doctrines, and practices, Perturabo found them wanting. His punishment was decimation. By lottery, 1 in every 10 legionaries was chosen to be beaten to death by his comrades.
Wait, so this initially happens, like the decimation order happens as soon as it becomes the actual Primarch of this legion. And because of it, he felt it wanting, maybe because of the corpse grinder, because they were just kind of like going and they were suffering those staggering losses that they mentioned in the first part. So in his eyes, I guess a nice way to put it is that he saw that he probably thought that they sucked, I guess, I mean, to put it simply, and ordered the decimation. Okay, so he wasn't lying when he said that this guy's very cold.
Such would be Perturabo's reign, brutal and unforgiving. Even before they were reunited with their Primarch, the Space Marines of the 4th Legion had inherited his military qualities. Perturabo quickly recruited new troops from Olympia and embarked on a campaign against a nearby moon base known as the Rock of Judgment.
Okay, real quick, I think I messed up that first part. He was really the Primarch, because obviously these guys were descendants or considered descendants of him, and that this is just when he came back. If I remember in the character, blah, Warhammer 40k knowledge, but okay, so yeah, he came back. All right, yeah.
Ruled by the Black Judges, it was a stunning success, though only fragmentary. The Iron Warriors were known for an affinity with technology and the clinical application of logic to military problems. This affinity was channeled by Perturabo, a skilled practitioner of siegecraft, into the mastery of that form of warfare. These abilities were increased by cross-training with the Mechanicum. The Iron Warriors' warsmiths could match skills with Magi, and it is said that Perturabo could beat any and all in the art of machine engineering. Their methodical attitude made them merciless men in battle and siege. After the siege works were built, there was a choice given to the besieged, either to throw down their arms then and there, or the Iron Warriors would show no mercy. Just like many other legions, they soon gained the reputation of brutality during siege, not to mention their merciless manner after the siege had taken place. But their typecasting as siege engineers or garrison troops set them apart from their brother legions, and made them feel increasingly marginalized. In particular, they were aggrieved by the Imperial Fist, whose Primarch Rogel Dawn often boasted about the impregnability of the defences they had constructed around the Imperial Palace on Terra. Perturabo was not the only one of the Primarchs who found his brother Dawn boastful and arrogant, but Perturabo was unable to let the insults to himself and his legion pass, and these continued to fester in his heart. Likewise, Corax, the Primarch of the Raven Guard, made little secret of his contempt for Perturabo and his legion, dismissing them as stolid attritionists, anathema to Corax's own concept of fluid hit-and-run warfare. End quote.
But I mean, if hit-and-run warfare works, man, you know, it works. I mean, very sticking to the whole part about them being very logical and methodical in what they're doing.
The return of their Primarch to the nest did no favours to the Iron Warriors. Is one perspective, but we shall address that later. What it did do was play into the strengths of the Legion and make them even more. Just more of what they already did. Better at it. For Perturabo was a phenomenal mind, even amongst the Primarchs. A true thinker, but always with a practical application. He had studied the art of war on his homeworld of Olympia, but then all other texts in his brief time with the Emperor, for it was very short. His ability to organize, plan, calculate every little detail of an entire campaign before it had begun could be argued as his greatest virtue. But his methodical war-by-numbers approach was uninspiring, and left his legion as merely numbers. All of his men were just numbers. All compassion or camaraderie that was found from most Primarchs towards their genetic sons was simply not there.
Okay, so now it's making a lot more sense as to why the Iron Warriors are cold. I mean, because this guy's obviously cold. He's cold, pretty much cold-blooded, I guess. And then just the way he could be so methodical, and like how he said, kind of plan out a whole battle and actually take into account all, I don't know if every single variable, but at least like I guess the broader picture at the very least. And so far this seems like the only one that I've heard of that actually talked about using war of attrition and being like a numbers game, right? And not really having that father-son type bond, like how it seems like the other legions had it.
The campaigns of the Iron Warriors under Perturabo were like boardroom affairs, corporate, organized, efficient, but utterly without remorse or consideration to the horrific casualties they entailed. Some say that Perturabo made his heart iron to avoid the crushing guilt of his actions, the way he used his sons. Some say he thought that they would know that it was all for a higher calling, that of the Imperium, the salvation of the human race entire. But it mattered not as the butcher's bill always climbed. Promotion came through survival, then ability, then politiquing. Yet Perturabo had installed such a rapid recruitment and training network that he sustained legion-worthy numbers of Astartes. Even so, backed up by more war gear than any other legion, perhaps possibly the first, the Iron Warriors were a machine that ground forward at a relentless pace in its conquests, but also in its collateral carnage. Thus it was that the thankless tasks, the constant losses, the endless heralding of others like Ribu, Guilliman, Rogel, Dawn, and Horus all led to Perturabo and his entire legion becoming twisted things of resentment. And in these fertile grounds, the seeds of rebellion were sown by Horus Lupercal, the War Master. He poured poisoned words into the ears of Perturabo, how the Emperor did not respect him, did not even consider him. He was like his legion before he had arrived, merely forgotten. A happy deluded fool, like a dog, wagging his tail at every order, to every doleful, honourless task given to him by his master, the Emperor. Alas, the words took hold.
Okay, so they didn't like him just because he did his job. But obviously, I mean, I could understand a suck-up. But I mean, I guess in this case, I mean, you've got people that would do... Well, I mean, I guess this is the only legion or group that has really done everything without complaint. I mean, some of the others might complain, but they might still follow the order, depending on what it is. But, So it seems like the way the other legion saw them is as being a suck-up. And it was Horus that ended up planting little seeds of resentment to let him grow even stronger, I guess.
The Iron Warriors and their Primarch, Perturabo, were amongst the traitor legions who turned to the side of Horus with the drop site massacre on Istvan V. They helped massacre near a full 3 legions of their brother Astartes, their Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Raven Guard, and they took great relish in doing so. From there, the road to Holy Terror was set.
I also think in this case scenario, that the reason why Horus could have also done this would have been since he probably already saw the amount of resentment that they were probably showing towards not being, I guess, like appreciated. So he thought it would be my guess is that he thought it would be very easy to get them to go with him on his side.
For Horus would take the 9 traitor legions, a full half of all of the armies of the Imperium or more, and smash his way to the very palace of the Emperor to defeat him. The Siege of Terror. Perturabo and his Iron Warriors were instrumental to the assault of the Holy Palace, that edifice of defence that Rogel Dawn had been working on for over half a decade, and thus they clashed finally. Rogel and his Imperial Fists will claim that they held the palace and the Iron Warriors failed. Yet this is a lie. Horus failed.
Okay, well, he just said Horus fell, and we really know that. But as far as them saying it's a lie, but then ended up it not being true, is this? I mean, because I understand that a lot of the lore, from what I've been told and seen, is that a lot of this is written from the view of the person who's actually describing them. So, like, a lot of this might be coming from like an Iron Warrior's perspective. So, was it a lie or was it not?
Perturabo did not. For the Emperor himself was forced to attack Horus on his own flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, due to the plain fact that the palace was about to fall. For all of Rogel Dawn's bluster, his pretty castle had been torn down, and the last ramparts were about to be breached. Let none ever forget that. Perturabo defeated Rogel on that day, yet he was to do so again. Yet Horus did die, slain by the master of mankind, and the traitor armies fled from the Sol system in disarray. As the other traitor legions of chaos were herded and harried back to the Eye of Terror, the Bastilles of the Iron Warriors were ever the bane of the wrathful Loyalist forces. The Iron Warriors bled them white when assaulted, yet could never be ignored. At last, Perturabo played one last card before he left for the Eye of Terror, as his brethren and their legions had almost universally done themselves. The Fortress Eternal, the Iron Cage. To quote, Perturabo soon devised and enacted the...
I remember this from the... Shit, what was it? The Black Templar one. As far as the Iron Cage, I think I called it the Bird Cage the first time. This is where we get a little bit, or at least it was my first glance in this scene, or this time, that we got to saw Sigismund, OG champion. So, excited to see if he makes a little bit of a mention about him here.
One real victory for the Iron Warriors in the immediate aftermath of the Horus Heresy. He crafted a trap on Sebastus IV, designed to ensnare Rogel Dawn and the Imperial Fists, with whom Perturabo and his warriors harboured a bitter rivalry. This trap was known as the Eternal Fortress, a keep centred within 20 square miles of bunkers, towers, minefields, trenches, tank traps, and redoubts. Upon hearing of this, Rogel Dawn publicly declared that he would dig Perturabo out of his hole and bring him back to Terra in an iron cage. As a result of this statement, the ensuing battle has become known as the Iron Cage, or the Iron Cage Incident. Rogel Dawn expected an honourable battle, but this was not to be. Beginning by isolating the 4 companies of the Imperial Fist that landed from their orbital support, Perturabo began to carefully divide his enemy and destroy them piecemeal. Some Imperial Fists managed to penetrate the defences and reach the centre of the Eternal Fortress, only to find there was no central keep. Simply an open space watched by yet more defences.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, was it? From what I heard, is that what happened was, you know, the whole thing with Guilliman and him trying to split, I believe he was trying to split the Imperial Fist, right, into the chapters. Now, I mean, obviously this is where we got the Black Templars. The Imperial Fist were still considered we're going to be considered a chapter made of the most veteran, and I think was it Crimson Fists. I hope I'm getting it right. They're supposed to be like some of the more younger guys, optimistic, I believe, and that he ended up because he knew that his guys wouldn't do that, or that they wouldn't want to be separated into separate. There's a ice cream truck out there that he had them come here as a trap. Like, he knew that they were going to get slaughtered, and that this is kind of how the whole Iron Cage became to be, or like the whole trap, from my understanding.
Fortress was a decoy of no real value. By the 6th day of the siege, Imperial Fist Space Marines were fighting individually, without support, using the bodies of their own battle brothers for cover. But Dawn would not relent, and he continued his assault. The siege of the Eternal Fortress lasted for a further 3 weeks. Relief came only in the form of recruit Guilliman and a force of Ultramarines. The sacrifice of over 400 Loyalist Marines Geneseed paved the way for Perturabo's ascension to Demon Princehood. Following this, the Iron Warriors retreated into the Eye of Terror, and Perturabo crowned the world of Mendringard as the new home of the Legion. Since then, Perturabo has remained on Mendringard while his Legion both continues the long war while warbands periodically battle one another. End quote. The Iron Warriors are seen as the rival to the Imperial Fists usually, an embittered rivalry and jealousy, antipathy leading to animosity between Rogel and Perturabo. One always created defences, Rogel, and one tore them down, Perturabo, with their similarity and personality as well, both cold and aloof. It was inevitable that they would hate each other on sight. But it
What was that one thing? I think someone mentioned it in a comment. The whole unstoppable force meets an immovable object. One of them isn't. When they collide, one of them is going to have to move.
is this actually how the fans, the lore buffs, should see things? I would like to forward a different view, just for consideration. He is actually the mirror of Guilliman, Reboot Guilliman, the present regent of the Imperium. Oh ho! And how so, O obviously senile bald one might ask. Well, brethren, sisters, lend me your ears. Let me take your imaginations and analytic elements on a little jaunt, just for fun. Guilliman is an empire builder, and gathered a colossal legion due to his support structures, and then a lot of autonomy to maintain a doctrine leading to few casualties, support and doctrine through logistic control and accuracy. Perturabo managed to create a doctrine which led to horrific casualties, yes, yet his formidable mind had created a system where his numbers were replenished, and his men trained so swiftly that they maintained fighting strength despite the losses. A formidable achievement. What if the Iron Warriors had not the losses thrust on them by Horus and the Emperor before him? How large could they have been? Perturabo and his Iron Warriors all were incredibly skilled in technology. Perturabo learnt as fast and as voraciously as good old Bobby G, but in technical matters as well as war, the equal and opposite of Reboot Guilliman. They are so alike in so many ways, mirror images far more than he and Dawn, if you ask me. Both Reboot and Perturabo are aspects of a king, as Guilliman planned the Imperium and Ultramar and bureaucracy of the future. Empire building. Perturabo was forging the greatest military and technical machine to prosecute a war, but in a tyrannical way, where Reboot got the best out of his men through loyalty, confidence, pride and discipline. Perturabo got it by ruthless and draconian measures and punishments. Decimation, the ultimate gamble. It makes or breaks an army. But was it just him stamping his authority? Yes. That would be an unmissable sign of power. The ability to remove 1/10 of one's own army just to gain obedience. Definitely the acts of a tyrant. The good king in Reboot against the...
I guess it really comes down to like how are you gonna choose to lead, right? I believe I mentioned about in the Marine Corps. One, you could either berate your guys, talk shit on them, make them do PT or physical training. To get them to think, hey, they never want to mess up on knowledge or being able to do something like disassembling 240, right, or machine gun, and not being able to place it back together, and then doing a functions check to make sure that it's actually got put back together properly and works. And then that way they can remember, hey, I never want to do that again, so let's go ahead, make sure that we don't do that again. Or you can take a different approach, which that one is kind of like, I guess, a fear tactic, which I guess can work in certain scenarios, right? I mean, we are talking about the 40K universe, or you could take a different method, which I guess would be the way Guilliman kind of did it, which is just kind of the complete opposite. It seemed like he wanted to minimize casualties, or say, for example, in the Marine Corps, the opposite would be just training your guys in a classroom setting, making sure that they understand what they have to do, what they need to do, and then slowly start building stress on them so they can try to do it in stressful environments, and then slowly just build that, I guess, resilience or mental fortitude. And then, I mean, just those typically tend to be the two, I guess, main ones, right? But definitely with Iron Warriors, man, the fear even though not something I would personally do, but granted, grimdark, um, it seems to have been very effective.
The bad king in Perturabo, but equally able. But this entry is not about Perturabo. It is about the Iron Warriors. Iron. They had no choice. They had to become cold and hard and unbending. Iron folded and forged on 1,000 battlefields nobody else would take. Pawns sacrificed to keep the tarnish from the chosen Primarch's legions. Then cursed with a heartless master, one would think. To be pitied? No. A tragedy, to be sure, a veritable Iliad of woes, but it has forged them. They are iron. Iron within, iron without. More than ever, they are to be feared. Although they have fractured, perhaps Perturabo can combine them again. They may passingly nod to the great powers of chaos, but they do not bend the knee swiftly, like the children or Death Guard, or live on them like the word bearers. They are of the other persuasion, those who fight for chaos more to fight against the Imperium, for their shackles to be gone. Yet Perturabo is a demon prince. But they only retain their old character and professionalism, that being bringing overwhelming power and support weaponry to any engagement. They maintain their equipment and generate more. Whereas a business, a bloody one, but a business. The business of revenge. So they remain a terror of a force. Disciplined, ordered, well-trained, provisioned, and equipped. And all then with the augmentation and engorgement of the powers of chaos undivided. For they will serve none exclusively. Some say that they do not truly bend the knee to chaos at all. And yet Perturabo is a demon prince. Against such a force, the Imperium will always have issues due to the chapter system and a lack of cohesion. Also, Demon Perturabo has never been seen. Some say all who have seen him have died. Few others can say the same. And now that the yawn of Mork and Gork, the tear across the galaxy, has opened, they run amok, forever tearing down the hard places of the Imperium, and then replacing them with twisted mockeries devoted to chaos, but more so to the deaths of any who approach, let alone any who attempt to siege these hell-pit nightmares. And none will ever gain any mercy from this legion. For the Iron Warriors truly are what they claim, what their battle cry is. They are iron. Iron within. Iron without.
Alright, let's go ahead and talk about that for a minute. Now, everything out during the video, just a little bit there at the end, right? With the part they said about how, so they really don't bend the knee to chaos. Or he said that they may or may not bend the knee to chaos, but I have the feeling like they don't. I feel like they just want revenge. I don't know how far they would take it though, as far as against actually fully killing the Emperor, right, in his throne, maybe taking out Guilliman, maybe completely taking out the Imperial Fist. I don't know exactly how far they would consider it, right? I mean, and considering that they did at a certain point start to consider the civilians cannon fodder, if I remember correctly. I think it was in the first part. In any case, that little part at the end as well, when they said that even though it seems like they don't bend the knee to chaos, he's a demon prince. So how does this process actually happen? How does someone become a demon prince if they don't necessarily follow a specific chaos god, right? Is it just a title? I mean, I guess it would be a title, but also I would assume he gets some kind of power up, right? But I don't know who's the one who specifically, or maybe it's just the power thing. Like once you get to a certain amount of strength, power, whatever you want to call it, then you're just considered one, right? And then no one else has actually seen him as a demon. So for or all those who have died, so how would that knowledge be there as far as knowing whether or not this is true or not? So I mean we don't even, I mean by that logic I don't even know if he's technically alive still, right? Just that he's a demon prince, but nobody can really confirm that. So it's more at this point, I mean, unless the people who did see him spread the word, but then ended up dying. But in any case, can't tell for a fact of whether or not he is alive or not. But in any case, that's going to go ahead and do it for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe. It really does help me a lot. Hit that dislike button if you didn't like it. It helps me improve the channel. If you're curious to see what's coming up next, hit the description down below. You're going to see a list of about 5 videos. From top to bottom, it's going to be how I view them. But until then, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.